I've got a story to tell you. Roger decided to die. I knew Roger for about 25 years, maybe longer. Roger was one of my closest friends. And from the time he opened the door, when I went to visit him, I could see in his face that Roger decided to die. He made an obvious, conscious decision to die. The reason we went to visit Roger is because Roger was having a lot of problems. He had a business that failed. It was tough. He had a pretty good personal life, but he didn't lose a little bit. He lost everything. And it devastated him. And so when we went there to cheer Roger up. But when he opened the door, I could see immediately my friend Roger decided to die. You know, it's nice to see that. When we came to cheer him up, we wanted to take him out to dinner. He didn't want to go. He sat in the chair. He loved to watch sports, and that's about all he did. We did take him to dinner. He wasn't conversational. He wasn't the Roger I knew. He was the Roger that decided to die. And at the time he made that decision, he was a healthy guy. At the time he made that decision, Roger was the kind of guy that prior to that, he was really happy, jolly, terrific. But this was a new Roger. This was a Roger I didn't expect to meet. This was a Roger that was hard for me to see. As I mentioned, we were close. And I never thought I'd see a Roger like that. But he did truly decide to die. He had just basically taken himself out of humanity. And no surprise to any of you, on April 25th of this year, we buried Roger. It was a decision he made. Roger had a close friend who went through a lot of similar type of situations. Herman had a business. Herman and his wife's business had been going well for well over 20 years. Things have been going really, really well. And in 2008, about the same time that Roger's business failed, things went really bad for Herman. Things went really bad for Herman. Every month in their business was a negative cash flow. Every month in Herman and his wife's business, it was negative cash flow. Things were getting worse. They were laying people off. The business kept getting worse. But the difference between Herman and Roger is that Herman didn't decide to die. Herman decided to live. Herman decided to live because he had something else to keep him going. He could come to work every day and think, what am I going to do? How am I going to turn this business around? It's going to be tough for me. But instead of deciding to die, Herman had something to carry him through. He had been involved in Rotary for quite a while. And Rotary, we hear so much about what we can do for Rotary. And Herman didn't know it at the time, but he found out what Rotary could do for him. And you may not know it as a Rotarian, but it's great for us to hear the kind of things we can do, and the power we have with what we can do with the ETA project, and the things that we can do with Power Flower, and all of the great things we can do internationally, in our district, and locally. But do we ever stop to think of what Rotary does for us? A little bit different angle. And Herman didn't stop to think what Rotary would do for him either. He just was a part of Rotary, and he continued to go to his Rotary Club meetings, and he continued to be active on a regular basis. And in fact, he was so engaged he realized that he was still giving back to humanity. He still had a life, even though his business was failing, and even though he lost nearly all of the money that he and his wife had set aside for retirement, and he didn't know whether or not that business would survive. It was a very, very difficult time for him. But what did Herman do instead? He absorbed himself in Rotary, and it was Rotary that gave him hope. A wise man once said, to have faith is to be certain of the things hoped for, sure of the things you cannot see. And Rotary gave Herman faith. It gave Herman the will, the desire, and the enthusiasm to move on, to make it through this difficult time. So instead of making the decision that Roger made, Herman made the decision to live. He didn't realize at the time that Rotary was going to become his lifeboat. He didn't realize at the time that Rotary was going to help him to avoid depression, the depression of losing everything. He didn't realize that Rotary was going to help him manage stress. But even more importantly, no one else knew what he was going through. Because with Rotary and with the connections he had, he'd come in and every day was a happy day. Because every day was a day that he knew that he was contributing to Rotary. He got involved on the district level, and he did a lot of things, and it really kept him going. It carried him through these very, very difficult times. And so what Herman did is he realized, without stopping to say it, he was going to do it. He focused on a higher purpose. And as one physician advised, strive to achieve something bigger than yourself. By giving back, you're giving to yourself. And that's what Herman realized as a Rotarian. By giving back, he began getting and giving to himself. It carried him through a really, really difficult time. And the song that we sang here said, the last line said, happiness is anything or anyone at all that's loved by you. And we as Rotarians, when we unite together, we realize that that's the kind of connections that we have. That's what Rotary does. It gives us connections to be anything and connect with anyone at all. And it gives us a reason to move on. Now that's a little part of Herman's story. That was 3.5, 4 years of very difficult times financially for Herman and his wife. Here he was in his late 60s, having to start over. But you know, he hung in there, and it carried him through, and the sun started to come out. Yes, it returned to those thrilling days of yesterday, but what has happened is that suddenly the business kind of began to turn around. And suddenly there's a reason for optimism in the business. Would you have seen it in his demeanor? Not at all. Because his demeanor kept saying, I am a Rotarian. I am giving back. And all the while, Rotary was saying to him, we're lifting you up. We're carrying you. And that is what it means to be a Rotarian. One last comment. When I was in the military, they called me Herman. Thank you.